Look at this. Absolute craziness. 16 year, 146, and a 12 year at 149.57 proof. Look how dark it is. Why is this stuff sitting on this shelf? Stay tuned to find out. So in this video, we are going to review the 13th Colony Cask Strength, the 2024 batch, picked up from the distillery. And this one was signed by Master Distiller Graham. And we'll also run through a tour of 13th Colony and also some bourbon hunting in and around Americus, Georgia and Columbus. Oh yeah, that was a good pop. So here's the standard slow-mo pour. This is a viscous whiskey. It is not as viscous as the Double Oak or the 15th anniversary, but it's also not as dark. You can sort of tell right from the get-go. This is not quite one of those things. Those were more like, 10-year, 13-year age. This is probably more 5 or 6. Hard to say. Maybe they tell us, but I don't think so. But still, excellent whiskey. As far as color and mouthfeel is very nice. The sort of copper color rather than the black, which some people may prefer. This is probably, there'll be a lot of people out there that prefer this over the Double Oak. And as far as mouthfeel, excellent. And finish, once again, you'll hear later on, but not really like a Double Oak, but none are. So at the start of the video, you probably saw a hidden shelf I found. Well, not really. It was right there. It was in the bottling line. Had some really dark looking cask strength ryes. Stay tuned to find out the backstory about them. Anyway, for a 13th Colony cask strength, it's pretty light. This is not your Double Oaked or anything like that, but that's because that's very special. It's 120.64 proof. I think there's like 7,000 bottles of this batch. Their label, still crooked. Stay tuned to find out more about that. Did I mention it? But I think what it is these bottles are actually the old prototypes for birthday bourbon, and they're slightly tapered. So the label is straight, but when you put a straight label on a tapered bottle, it sort of has to spiral around it. So they've fixed it on their new labels by making them non-straight. So it comes out straight. Anyway, on the nose, like I say, no Double Oak, but it's got a nice nose. It's citrus, much brighter than the Double Oak and the 15th anniversary. More like a cask strength version of their standard one, right? Which is a great bourbon. But yeah, vanilla and slight citrusness. That's nice. It doesn't really drink 120 proof for me. That drinks more like 100. That's really smooth. It's got those sort of 13th Colony notes in it. Like I say, really dialed down, not up there with the Double Oak and the 15th anniversary in flavor, but it's all there. It's just not as heavy, which is to be expected, right? But this still is delicious. Like that vanilla and that citrus note carries through to the palate, and the finish is medium to long. Yeah, it's another great one. So yeah, so we'll go do the tour. Like I say, I think it's $20 to do the tour. You do some tastings. I think everything that I've recorded is fine. They do now admit that they do contract distill. So that's a thing. And they're also expanding. They've got themselves a new holding tank for blending. So yeah, hopefully they just keep on trucking. You see all the barrels there for future double oaks, so that'll keep trucking along, and then they hope to do more of their single barrels, and you'll see some people having single barrel ryes that were palletized, ready to go. And that's the one I've missed out on, has been a Cask Strength rye, and I love their ryes, so I can only imagine how good they are. And the ones you'll see in the video are black, like they're double oak, dark. So, but this is good. I'm a huge fan of 13th Colony. I love pretty much everything they do. So, I don't know if this is secret knowledge. I'll tell you anyway. They had a gin that was aged in their bourbon barrels, and for a gin, I could drink it straight, right? Not many gins, no gins I could say that I can just drink straight gin, but this was pretty delicious. And I haven't heard of anyone doing that before, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, so stay tuned for the tour. So here's a run through of the quick tour at 13th Colony. Like I said, it cost about 20 bucks, and very interesting, totally worth it. Go check them out.
Do you filter your whiskey?
We do not.
So not filtered at all? Just...
It goes through a strainer, essentially. When we say filter, that literally we dump it into a thing and we catch all of the char and stuff. There's no filtering to it. We just get all the trash out of it. So when you get your bottle, you don't get little floaties in it. So
before you did the mash tun, where did you used to do your mashing?
It was a big square tun. So literally they had what looked like, you know, when you bake the little spatulas, the rubber spatulas, we basically had a giant one of those that just kind of like stirred it in the corners, because it wasn't originally a mash tun. They made it out of something else. So it was square. It kind of was weird because, you know, it circles and it would catch in the corner. So.
And then the still not being copper, that's sort of where all the conspiracy theories came from and all the rest of it, because where's all the copper?
It doesn't, and that's the thing, is it doesn't actually have to be copper. It actually has copper in it.
Yeah, because you've got to get the sulfides out, eh? They get
right. But it doesn't have to be copper, but it has it in there. But Lord forbid you don't do what everybody else does. And
do you think it's the lack of copper that gives, you know, you guys that special flavor?
It could be. It could be that. A lot to do with the weather, for sure. And like our rick house, which we'll talk about in there, that has a lot to do with what our flavor is. And honestly, I think it has a lot to do with our master distiller. So our master distiller is a Le Cordon Bleu trade master chef. So that's what he did by trade. He was also in the Coast Guard, Coast Guard. But he has that chef background. So when he does things on like a flavor profile, kind of like with his, you know, chefness.
So if that tank there on the right looks like a vacuum thing from a car wash, that's because it is.
Vodka or gin, this is where we do it. These are also the holding tanks. So when we started back in 2009, these little bitty tanks over here were all we needed to do a run. Now when we do this is the newest thing we've ever got. It's we've never had anything brand new really before.
That's why we don't have nice things, Pepper.
Get out!
And this big, shiny, brand new thing comes in, and we're all like little kids, because the boys have always had to make things. You know, if we needed a part for something, they just welded it themselves, or it was used. And so this was the first time that we've gotten something that's like brand new. So that was very exciting for us. A little bit different than most distilleries if you go to them, because this was actually started as a hobby for our owners. They wanted a way to make legal booze because doing it on the farm was bootleg. They thought, oh, this will be a good hobby. This will make a little bit of money. I don't think that they had ever planned for as much as we've grown. But in the beginning they didn't want to sink it, so they built a lot of they had somebody build it. This is actually one of the newer things that we have. This is our mash tun. This is where all of your wheat, your corn, your malted barley, your rye, whatever your mash bill is going to be. It goes in there with your water and heats up and cooks it. Comes out looking kind of like oatmeal, honestly. It goes into the ferment tanks and he'll pitch yeast to it. It'll sit there a couple of days. And then once it starts to smell like old beer in here, it's time to put it in the still. The still is going to look a little different than probably anything that you've seen because it is made out of recycled and repurposed metal. It does have copper inside of it. It is a column steel. But this part right here, though, is actually a car wash vacuum housing that they repurposed where it comes out. If you guys would like to take zero clue.
A lot of it was like back in medicine, wasn't it? Didn't they use it for like medicinal something or other back in the day?
I've heard medicine, I've heard cosmetics, I've heard other things.
And then it was a mattress factory.
But it was just a bunch of, they didn't need a bunch of rooms.
So we were out in the bottling line and I saw this. What is that? Let's enhance. And it is what, 16 years, 146 proof, 12 years, 149.57 proof. Look at the color on that. It's like motor oil, darker than double oak, I would say. But 13th Colony did contact me about this after my Instagram post, and apparently this shelf is failed labels or wrong labels. So not saying the proof is wrong, but for example, that 16 year is not real. It's actually only a 10 year, but still 146 proof. Not sure what's wrong with the labels on these other ones, but that sort of explains it. 16 years, there'd be nothing left in the barrel. But here's like 3 different single barrels ready to go out. They seem to all be possibly ryes, so if anybody knows anything about these batch numbers and where these are going, message me, DM me, because I really need a Cask Strength rye from these guys. Because look at the color. I love their rye. I prefer their rye over their bourbon, but I've just never really had it. So let me know in the comments. Are these yours?
And he and Brian taste every single barrel, and if it's a little bit off or it's a little bit different, somebody, they catch that. So if there's one that's very, very different and it's probably going to throw the taste of it off, they pull it out. So it's a blend of years. So that's why it's consistent, is because they constantly keep, an eye on what it tastes like. It's not like, oh, these are all 4 years, so we put them all in a thing and it tastes completely different. And I will tell you, we do what we call contract distilling, which is we do make our own stuff here, but you see the size of our still. We can only make so much, so we actually do send it to someone. They make our mash bill. It comes to us cleared, we put it in barrels, and we age it all here. So there is, it does make, some of it is made like somewhere, distilled somewhere else and then brought to us, but it is our mash bill. And everybody's upset about that.
So personally, for me, all their explanations sort of rang true, right? They're just some guys. They started this. It was pretty small. The labels were approved. They were approved by all the regulatory people in the state and federal. Like, how were they to know that their labels weren't exactly correct? And now they know, and they're slowly correcting them. But I think, as everybody knows, it's not a simple process. Now, did they want to come clean with their contract distilling? Probably not. But they have now, so I think it's all fair. I think these guys are really above board, and they're making some fantastic stuff. And that, at the end of the day, is all that matters. So now let's go do some bourbon hunting in Americus, Georgia. Americus had about 3 or 4 liquor stores. I found this one to be one of the best. Really nice people. All their standard stuff was pretty close to MSRP, maybe, $10, $20 more. I think that Weller was about $40, so, not outrageous for a Weller these days. And all their standard stuff was quite reasonable. They also had a very good selection. Like this was down one of the aisles. This is their bourbon aisle, and as you can see, it's just packed with all sorts of stuff. Bottles on top of bottles, precariously up there. The old rare breed. But yeah, no, they Pursuit United, Jebediah, whole bunch of stuff that you don't normally see in a little town. I think this is mostly because Americus is getting a little bit of tourism from the distillery there, like Eagle Rare. That wasn't $39, but I think it was only like $45. A lot of bookers around these days. People maybe not buying it as much. It is pretty pricey, but I think that was about $100. So for bookers, that's not too bad. All the Mitches and some standard confiscated Kentucky Owl, High West, Redwood Empire, the Lost Monarch one, which was pretty good. Not the Cask Strength. They did have a lot of that RD1 at very reasonable prices. And Rabbit Hole, big selection of Rabbit Hole there, which I've never really tried. And Ben Holiday, which really good. Going to do a video on a whole bunch of different Ben Holidays we've got, including the Bourbon Law one. So stay tuned for that. This Rough Rider, that's a New York distillery, craft distillery out of Beatty, New York. Been around since 2007. Seems interesting. Never tried it. RD1. The RD1 Amberana is probably the only Amberana I can stomach right now. And $62. I think that's pretty much MSRP. And hey, Knob Creek 12. A shit ton of Knob Creek 12 for $80. That's pretty close to MSRP. I think I probably would have picked one of those up if I hadn't just bought a store pick. It's a 10-year store pick that, wow, not really a store pick, it's a club pick from the old Facebook. And that Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, that was the A124, and that also was at basically MSRP $80, right? Maybe $5 more. But huge selection. Really good selection for a small little town in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Now, they had this Wild Turkey Kentucky Spirit. Still looking for a Camp Nelson. Like, I used to see Camp Nelsons everywhere, and until like the Bourbon Junkies mentioned them, I have not seen a Camp Nelson here. It's all been Tyrone, but it's all good. It's all good stuff, but I really am looking for a Camp Nelson, especially a Camp Nelson F, because I love the single Rickhouse Camp Nelson F, and I tried a store pick from, it seems Camp Nelson F is just the prime place. So anyway, there's all the bourbons, probably more bourbons than I've seen in most places, in most small towns, and then we'll go over to the museum. Now, let's not talk about prices here, right? They are fairly ridiculous, but I'm okay with it. These people have to make a living, and I totally understand that. They have to buy a lot of bourbon that they probably don't want to buy to get those bottles. But this stuff's back to the more reasonable stuff, the Garrison Brothers Old Soul. This stuff is maybe a little bit over MSRP, but you know, look at the variety in this town. Four Gates and Davis counties. Now, this, like I say, the stuff in the cabinet was expensive, without a doubt. Probably like what secondary was 4 or 5 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago, but you know, these guys probably don't keep up with secondary, so they don't really know. And if you need it, you know, you can come here and get it. So, and if you don't, well, then you don't. But if you just want to get yourself a nice bottle of something, there's plenty of really good bottles here at pretty reasonable prices. Ben Holiday for one. That Gypsy, that's Eric Church's bottle. I think that might be a special one. I wasn't too sure whether that was just a standard one. Like they said they're Eric Church, but I'm pretty sure there's a couple of like special bottles he did. Not really into that whole scene. That Jack Daniel's 12-year, that was $2.99. Right? You can get that on secondary these days for maybe $2.50. So, and the George T. Stagg, $1,100. I think there was a 2023. They had a lot of them there. They had 3 or 4 of them there, which is pretty impressive for a small town. But you've got to think, these guys didn't get that delivered. I don't believe that came on a truck. I can't imagine these guys sell enough bourbon that they would be allocated 3, 4, or 5 George T. Staggs. So I'm not saying how they got it, but they possibly had to trade for it. They possibly got it off secondary. I don't know. So that's why the price is obviously elevated. I think there's a few middlemen. 5-tier system, you could say. So this place is in Columbus, Georgia. Frisky Whiskey, I think it comes up on the Google. And how can you turn down a place called Frisky Whiskey? Once again, really, this is a much larger liquor store, and I'm really looking for the old Bellamede, right? It's hard to tell whether these are old or new, but can't wait to get an old one. But you know, pretty decent prices on all their standard stuff. Once again, these guys had a museum, and we'll get to that in a bit. But you know, some old Calumet, well, not good old Calumet, and then $59 for Eagle Rare. That's a little bit pricey. Calvin Collaboration 2. That seemed pretty old. I think they're up to like 5, and 4-gate's always expensive, so I don't think that's a bad price at all. Still looking for that new Bullet Rye, like the aged stuff, and that's much cheaper than you can buy the 13th Colony at 13th Colony, and that's a legal thing. Some good old Station or whatever. I drank a pick of that, which was really good. A friend of mine did a pick, and it was fantastic. Some more Ben Holiday and Kentucky Owl and Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye, which I got my highest one ever from this place. Yeah, those prices are pretty expensive. And then this cabinet, outrageous, right? But I think this is this guy's collection. For example, that Parker Heritage Rye, he wouldn't even give me a price. Just wouldn't even give me a price. He said that's his. He doesn't know if he's ever going to get another one. So it sits there until he gets another one. So, yeah, you want it, you're going to have to pay for these things. But, hey, they're there. $2.50 for a Jack 12. That's a better price than the other one. So, right, it's just hunting. It's bourbon hunting in a non-state controlled state. $2.50 for a stag. I'm probably not going to pay that these days. But it is what it is. So, anyway, hope you guys liked the video. And if you're ever in Georgia, go see 13th Colony. Fantastic people, fantastic bourbon. And if you ever see it on the shelves, give it a go.